I was in the kitchen when I suddenly heard my boyfriend laughing in the dining room, followed by him saying something that made my stomach drop. I met Fabian almost exactly 2 years ago at the strangest possible moment. I was grabbing groceries at Trader Joe's when I overheard the store manager berating a man about parking in the wrong spot. The manager was harsh, red-faced, and pointing, making a scene in front of everyone. The man, Fabian, stood there looking mortified. I don't know what came over me, but I stepped in and said something like, "The parking signs are confusing, maybe we can all take a breath." The manager glared at me but backed off. Fabian looked relieved, and as we both checked out, he asked if he could buy me coffee as a thank you. We clicked immediately. He was charming, tall, with a crooked smile that stirred my heart. He listened when I spoke, or at least seemed to, remembered small details, and texted me good morning every day. By our third date, I was falling hard. My parents, especially my dad, were always supportive. They helped me get an apartment after college, while I found my footing career-wise. Dad also assisted with car payments and some bills. I felt guilty about it, but they insisted they wanted to help me get on my feet. Fabian moved in with me about 8 months into our relationship. It seemed fast, but his roommate situation had fallen apart, and it made sense. My parents were cautiously optimistic. Mom liked him right away. Dad took longer to warm up but eventually accepted Fabian. They even played golf together a few times, which was Dad's ultimate seal of approval. Everything seemed perfect until it was. About 6 months ago, Fabian's parents started visiting more often. They lived an hour away and would drop by for dinner or Sunday brunch. His mom, Lydia, always complimented my apartment, my cooking, or whatever else. His dad, Arthur, was quieter but polite enough. They were fine, I suppose, but something about them felt off, like they were performing rather than being genuine. During one visit, Lydia got teary-eyed looking around my living room and said, "You have such a warm atmosphere here. It's been so long since we felt like a family." Arthur nodded, adding that their Fabian was golden and they hoped we'd stay together a long time. It felt oddly intense, but I smiled and thanked them. Looking back, there were signs I missed. Fabian's comments about my dad's generosity, jokes about hitting the jackpot with me, or how he'd text his parents right after we got something new for the apartment. He never seemed to actively pursue better job opportunities, despite constantly talking about his big plans. I noticed patterns when we were around my parents. When money or careers came up, Fabian would go quiet or change the subject. If my dad mentioned his business, Fabian would suddenly ask detailed questions. Later, when we were alone, he'd make digs about my dad being old money or set in his ways. One night, while scrolling through Instagram together, he saw a photo of his ex and muttered that she had the looks but not the stability. When I asked what he meant, he kissed my forehead and said I was the whole package. It felt strange. I started paying closer attention. He'd be on his phone a lot, smiling at texts, but putting it face down if I got near. Once, I glimpsed him messaging someone about how things were looking up financially. When I asked, he said it was just a buddy talking about a new job. I wanted to believe him. 3 times, I overheard snippets of phone conversations with his mom where he said things like, "It's comfortable," or "I'm just holding on for now." Each time he saw me, he'd switch topics, talking loudly about weekend plans or dinner. After the 3rd time, I started recording random conversations when he was on the phone. I know it sounds invasive, but something felt so wrong, and I needed to know if I was paranoid or if my instincts were right. Mostly, I caught nothing, just normal talks about sports or plans with friends. Then came the dinner at his parents' house. They invited us for a fancy meal: steaks, salads, wine, the works. Lydia kept touching my arm, saying how happy they were that Fabian had found someone so supportive. Arthur asked about my dad's business, which felt odd since they'd met several times. After dinner, I offered to cut the pie Lydia had baked. I went to the kitchen, leaving my phone on the dining room table, but before I left, I started the voice memo recording. I needed to know. The kitchen and dining room were separated by a half wall, so I could hear them but they couldn't see me. As I sliced the pie, I heard Fabian laugh, his trying to impress someone laugh. His voice lowered, but I caught every word. "She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable while I figure things out." My hands froze on the knife. I might have stopped breathing. He continued, I'll stick around long enough to squeeze what I can out of her. Then I'll find someone worth showing off. Arthur snorted, amused. Then Lydia, quieter but clear, just don't get her pregnant. Fabian replied, God no. Can you imagine being tied to her family forever? Her dad is an arrogant old goat. If it weren't for the money, I wouldn't even say hello to him. I stood there burning, holding the knife. I wanted to scream, throw something, or walk out and never return. Instead, I kept cutting the pie, perfect triangles. I don't remember deciding to, I just did. I walked back to the dining room, plates in hand, and smiled. I set the pie down, served each of them a slice, and sat. Fabian put his arm around me and kissed my cheek. I didn't flinch. I smiled and asked Lydia about her garden. The rest of the evening is a blur. I remember laughing at their jokes, helping clean up, and kissing Fabian in the car on the way home. I grabbed my phone from the table before we left. At our apartment, the one my parents paid for, I watched him kick off his shoes and flop on the couch like everything was normal. For him, it was. I didn't confront him that night, the next day, or the day after. I just watched him. How he checked my dad's social media when he thought I wasn't looking, suggested visiting my parents when our fridge was low, or mentioned his student loans around my dad. A week passed. I barely slept, replaying the recording, hoping I'd misheard. But no, his words were clear. She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable. I'll find someone worth showing off. I stopped eating much, stopped talking unless necessary. I'd lock myself in the bathroom and sit on the floor, trying to figure out what to do. Fabian noticed something was off but seemed annoyed rather than concerned, asking if I was on my period or being dramatic. It was Mom who broke through. She stopped by unexpectedly one afternoon when Fabian was out with friends, took one look at me, and sat me down at the kitchen table. What's going on with you and Fabian? Is he behaving normally? She asked, searching my eyes. I wasn't crying, I was past that. I felt empty. Do you want to hear it? I asked. Yes, she said. Just don't interrupt, okay? I played the recording. Fabian's voice filled the kitchen. She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable. Mom's face went still. By the time it reached arrogant old goat, she was trembling. When it ended, she was silent for what felt like forever. Then she stood, grabbed her coat, and said, Don't let him back here tonight. Where are you going? I asked. To your father. Wait here. I sat alone in the kitchen. My phone buzzed with a text from Fabian, grabbing drinks with the guys. Be back late. Don't wait up, I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a list. First update. Thank you all so much for the supportive comments on my last post. I wasn't expecting it to blow up like it did. Some of you asked for updates, so here's what happened after my parents showed up. I've never seen my dad so quiet. He's usually the type to fill silences with dad jokes or small talk, but when he walked through my door that night, he just nodded. Mom was behind him, her hand on his back like she was steadying him. She told him I had something he needed to hear. My stomach twisted as I pulled out my phone. Part of me wanted to back out, to pretend everything was fine, because playing that recording meant things would change forever. But I hit play. Watching Dad listen was indescribable. His face didn't change at first, he just stared at the phone. When Fabian laughed about me being convenient, something flickered in his eyes. When Fabian called him an arrogant old goat, Dad didn't explode like I expected. He sat there for a long moment after the recording ended, then reached across the table and took my hand. He asked if I was okay, not what I was going to do or how this happened, but if I was okay. I hadn't expected that question. I'd been so focused on the betrayal that I hadn't considered whether I was okay. The answer was no. I started crying then, really crying, for the first time since hearing the recording. Dad squeezed my hand and let me cry. Mom made tea, her solution to everything. When I calmed down, Dad asked when the recording was from. I told him it had been a week. He nodded, then asked where Fabian was. I checked my phone, 3 more texts from him. Getting another round. Mike says hi. Don't wait up, babe. So normal, so oblivious. I told Dad Fabian was out drinking and wouldn't be back for hours. That's when Dad's demeanor shifted. He straightened up and asked for my laptop. I grabbed it from the couch, where I'd left it open with my what-to-do list. He glanced at it and smiled faintly. We'd been thinking along the same lines. We spent the next 2 hours making a plan, concrete steps, not just angry reactions. Dad was methodological, creating his own list in his phone's notes app. It was strange. I expected rage, but instead got calm, focused problem solving, somehow more intense than shouting. First, the apartment. Dad had co-signed the lease and was paying the rent. He called the property management company right there, explaining he needed to terminate the current lease and sign a new one in my name only. The leasing agent mentioned fees and paperwork, but Dad cut her off. I'll pay whatever fees are necessary. I need this done immediately. When she hesitated, he offered to visit the office first thing tomorrow. Suddenly, she was accommodating. Next, the car. Fabian had been driving my car, which Dad helped pay for. Dad called our insurance agent and removed Fabian from my policy, effective immediately. He logged into his Progressive app and changed the payment information to my account. He'd still help with costs, he said, but the account needed to be in my name. While Dad handled finances, Mom helped me list everything in the apartment that belonged to Fabian. It wasn't much: some clothes, his gaming setup, toiletries. Most furniture and kitchenware were mine or bought with my parents' money. I remembered something else. Fabian's sister, Catalina, worked for Dad's company. She'd been hired 6 months ago after Fabian mentioned she was looking for a job. Dad had interviewed her as a favor to me and given her a position. I hesitated to bring it up. It felt petty, but Mom noticed me typing and deleting on my laptop. When I told them about Catalina, Dad's expression hardened. He didn't fire her on the spot, he's not that kind of person. But he emailed HR, asking them to review her position during an upcoming restructuring, noting that while she shouldn't be fired without cause, her role was non-essential if cuts were needed. It sounds cold, but honestly, Catalina had been coasting on her connection to me and Dad. She was often late, took long lunches, and was mediocre at her job. The only reason she hadn't been put on a performance plan was because of Fabian. Around midnight, we moved to the last item, the confrontation. Dad wanted to call Fabian's parents then, but Mom suggested waiting until morning. I agreed. I was exhausted and we needed clear heads. Dad reluctantly agreed, but insisted on staying the night. Mom went home to get overnight bags, while Dad helped me change the locks. Our building has electronic keypad locks, so we reset the code through the apartment's app. I felt a weight lift as we deleted Fabian's access. I slept on the couch, giving my parents the bedroom. I didn't want to sleep in the bed Fabian and I had shared. Around 3:00 a.m., my phone blew up with texts. Door code isn't working. Eleanor, WTF, are you serious? Let me in. It's freezing. I put my phone on silent and turned it face down. For the first time in a week, I slept deeply. In the morning, Dad made pancakes like it was a regular Saturday. We ate at the kitchen table, checking our phones and making small talk about the weather. It felt surreal, like we were play-acting normalcy. Fabian had stopped texting around 5:00 a.m. I guessed he'd crashed at a friend's place. Around 10:00, Dad said it was time to call Fabian's parents. My stomach clenched. Mom squeezed my shoulder, reminding me I hadn't done anything wrong. Dad set up his phone for a FaceTime call. After 3 rings, Lydia appeared, looking confused, then forcing a bright smile when she recognized us. Arthur was in the background, reading a newspaper. Lydia's cheerful hello faltered when she saw our expressions. She called Arthur over, who joined with a slight frown. Dad didn't waste time with pleasantries. He asked if they wanted to hear something interesting, then played the recording. Watching their faces change was something else. Lydia's hand flew to her mouth, Arthur's frown deepened. Neither looked surprised by what Fabian said, only that they'd been caught. When the recording ended, Lydia made excuses. It was just talk. Fabian didn't mean it. We were joking. Arthur tried to look stern, like he was hearing it for the first time. Dad let them ramble for about 30 seconds before cutting them off. He outlined the situation. Fabian was being removed from the apartment lease. His access to my car was revoked. All financial support was ending immediately, and Catalina's position at the company was under review. Lydia's face crumpled. She turned to me, teary-eyed, begging me to reconsider. Didn't I know how much Fabian loved me? Weren't we planning a future together? Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. I stared back at the woman who had smiled to my face while laughing behind my back, who had told her son not to get me pregnant, who had eaten my food while thinking I wasn't good enough for him. Mom leaned into the frame and told Lydia to close her mouth. "No one's smiling now," she said. "Goodbye." Dad ended the call before they could respond. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Dad's phone buzzed with a text from Fabian. "Where are you? Why can't I get in? What the hell is going on?" Dad typed a response, showed it to me for approval, and sent it. "Eleanor knows everything. Your things will be packed and left with the building manager. Don't contact her again." We spent the next few hours packing Fabian's stuff. It was strange handling his things, knowing what I knew. His favorite hoodie I used to sleep in, the coffee mug I bought him for Christmas, the framed photo from last summer's beach trip. It all felt contaminated. Mom and I finished taping the last box when we heard shouting outside. I looked out my second-floor window to see Fabian on the front steps, buzzing my apartment repeatedly. He looked awful, rumpled clothes, messy hair, red-faced with anger or alcohol or both. Dad went to the window and looked down. When Fabian spotted him, he yelled louder, "What right do you have to lock me out? This is my home too." Dad shook his head and closed the blinds. The buzzing continued for almost 20 minutes, then stopped. I peered through the blinds and saw Fabian sitting on the steps, head in his hands. A small, foolish part of me felt bad for him. But then I remembered, she's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable. I'll find someone worth showing off. Around 4:00 p.m., Dad loaded Fabian's boxes into his car and took them to the building manager's office as arranged. Mom and I stayed in the apartment, jumping at every noise. We ordered pizza for dinner, but barely ate. The reality had hit me. 2 years of my life had been a lie. Just after 8:00 p.m., the buzzer rang again. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. Fabian was back, looking worse than before. I answered the intercom. His voice was slurred as he begged to come up. "We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding." I didn't respond right away, and he got angrier. "Do you trust your parents more than me? Are you that much of a daddy's girl? Are you throwing away 2 years over one stupid conversation?" I took a deep breath and spoke. "You called me convenient. You said you'd use me, and then find someone worth showing off. You and your parents laughed about it." There was a long silence. Then his voice turned cold, calculated. "Have you been recording me? You know that's illegal in our state, without consent. You could get in trouble." Dad took the phone and told Fabian that if he didn't leave immediately, we'd call the police, that we had security footage of him harassing me, and that he had 10 minutes to get off the property. Fabian started shouting, but Dad ended the call. Mom called building security, while Dad and I watched the camera feed. After some arguing and gesturing, 2 security guards escorted Fabian off the property. We spent that night jumping at every sound. Dad slept on the couch, while Mom stayed with me in my room. I kept checking the security feed, expecting to see Fabian trying to break in, but the night passed quietly. In the morning, we finalized the new lease at the property management office. The car insurance was updated, my bank accounts were secured, and I changed all my passwords, removing Fabian from my Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon accounts. It was like erasing him from my digital life, one login at a time. The property manager confirmed Fabian had picked up his boxes, and security was notified not to allow him into the building without my permission. My parents helped me rearrange the furniture, as if changing the layout could erase his memory from the space. They stayed one more night, then returned to their lives. Mom hugged me tightly at the door. Dad looked like he wanted to say something profound, but just kissed my forehead and told me to call anytime, day or night. Then I was alone, really alone, for the first time in almost 2 years. The apartment felt too big, too quiet. I wandered from room to room, touching things, trying to reclaim my space. I ordered takeout and ate on the living room floor because the kitchen table felt too normal, too much like before. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You've made a huge mistake." I knew it was Fabian. I didn't respond, just blocked the number and turned off my phone. I lay awake until dawn, listening for footsteps that never came. Last update. It's been exactly 2 weeks since everything blew up, and I'm exhausted. The constant texts from unknown numbers, voicemails, and Instagram messages from fake accounts feel like dealing with a ghost that won't leave. This morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from different numbers between 2:00 a.m. and 6:00 a.m. I've blocked so many numbers that my block list is longer than my contact list. Fabian must be using temporary number apps or borrowing friends' phones. At first, I listened to the voicemails, hoping for a genuine apology, but they got worse. The first few were predictable. He was sorry, he didn't mean it, he was just impressing his parents. Then they turned angry. How could you do this to me? Do you know how much this hurts? By day 4, they became manipulative. Remember when I took care of you when you had the flu? Remember our beach trip? Now they swing between threatening and pathetic. Yesterday's voicemails. I've ruined his life, his sister lost her job because of me, his parents are disappointed, and he's practically homeless. Then 20 minutes later, he misses me, can't sleep, just wants to talk. What's weirder is that I catch myself almost responding. My thumb hovers over the keyboard, and I have to physically put my phone down. 2 years is a long time. There are moments when I miss the person I thought he was. But then I replay the recording. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable. I'll find someone worth showing off. Just don't get her pregnant. My friend Julia came over yesterday. She's been checking on me every few days, which I appreciate more than I can say. We were scrolling through TikTok when my phone buzzed with another unknown number. I ignored it, but she asked what was going on. I hadn't told our mutual friends the full story, just that Fabian and I broke up and it was messy. But sitting there, I showed her the recording. Her face shifted from confusion to shock to cold anger I'd never seen before. When it finished, she was quiet, then told me something that made my stomach drop. Fabian had texted her 3 days ago, saying he was worried because I was acting unstable and had made up a crazy story about him. She'd responded vaguely, unsure of what was happening, but now she understood. She showed me the thread. It was worse than I thought. He claimed I was having a breakdown, that my parents were enabling it, and suggested they stage an intervention. I felt ill. He was gaslighting my friends to make me seem crazy. Julia immediately texted our circle to warn them. While she did that, I checked my email and found messages from Fabian dating back days. I'd been so focused on blocking his texts that I hadn't checked my email. Some had attachments, photos of us together, screenshots of old loving texts I'd sent, even a video from last Christmas where I'm opening a necklace he gave me looking happy. It felt like emotional blackmail, as if he was saying, "Look how good we were. Look what you're throwing away." I deleted them all and set filters to send his emails to trash. That night, after Julia left, I couldn't sleep. Every noise made me jump. I kept checking the door's lock. Around 2:00 a.m., I scrolled through our old texts, looking for signs I'd missed. There were so many. Comments about Dad's business, questions about my trust fund, suggestions to ask my parents for things he wanted. How had I been so blind? The next morning, I woke to knocking, not on my door but my neighbor S. I peeked through the peephole and saw Fabian, surprisingly put together in a button-down shirt I'd bought him for his birthday, holding coffee and a bag from my favorite bakery. My neighbor, Orlando, opened his door looking confused. I couldn't hear everything, but Fabian said he wanted to surprise me but forgot his key. Orlando, naturally suspicious, asked why he didn't call me. Fabian stammered about it being a surprise. Orlando said he'd check with me first and closed the door. A minute later, he texted me, asking if he should let some guy named Fabian in. I replied, absolutely not, explaining we'd broken up and he wasn't welcome. Orlando sent a thumbs up. I watched through the peephole as he told Fabian I didn't want to see him. Fabian's fake smile dropped. He argued, his voice rising, but Orlando, who's 64 and works out religiously, crossed his arms and stared him down until he left. I texted Orlando a thank you, with about 15 exclamation points. He replied that Fabian gave him bad vibes, and to let him know if I needed anything. Note to self, bake Orlando cookies as a proper thank you. That afternoon, during a work Zoom call, my buzzer rang. I checked the camera feed, Lydia holding a gift basket. I ignored it. She buzzed repeatedly. Eventually, I pressed the talk button and asked what she wanted. Her voice was sickeningly sweet. She wanted to talk woman to woman. There was a misunderstanding. Fabian was devastated. Couldn't I give him a chance? I said I'd heard everything I needed on the recording. Her tone hardened. Did I know recording without consent was illegal in our state? They could press charges. I almost laughed. I told her to try. The recording was made in their house during a dinner they invited me to, and I'd only shared it with my parents and close friends to explain the breakup. I hung up and watched the feed as she stood there for 10 minutes before leaving the basket and walking away. The building manager later texted that they'd removed an abandoned package from my doorway. I asked them to throw it away. That evening, Dad called to check in. He sounded casual but worried. He mentioned Fabian had shown up at his office, asking to speak with him. Security escorted him out, but not before he made a scene in the lobby, shouting that Dad had ruined his life and turned me against him. I felt terrible. This was affecting Dad's business, but he assured me it wasn't a big deal, that security handled it. Still, I heard the tension in his voice. This was escalating in ways we hadn't expected. The next day, Saturday, I needed to get out. I'd been hiding in my apartment for days and craved fresh air. I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks away, found a corner table, and sat with my book, trying to feel normal. Halfway through my latte, I felt someone watching me. I looked up and saw Catalina staring from the counter. Our eyes met, and I braced for a scene, but she gave me a cold look and walked out. I stayed 15 more minutes, hands shaking, unable to focus. When I left, I took a different route home, looking over my shoulder. It felt ridiculous, like I was the one in the wrong, but I was scared. When I got back, Mom was in the lobby with groceries and dinner, saying she wanted to check on me. We spent the evening watching Netflix, avoiding Fabian's name, which was exactly what I needed. She slept on the couch. Around midnight, my phone blew up again. More unknown numbers, apologetic and angry texts. I silenced it and tried to sleep. In the morning, over coffee, someone pounded on my door. Not knocking, pounding, like they were trying to break it down. I checked the peephole. Fabian, disheveled and angry, shouting my name, demanding I open the door, saying he knew I was in there. Mom called security while I stood frozen. I found my voice and told him to leave, that security was coming. He laughed and said he just wanted to talk, that 5 minutes could explain everything. I asked if he denied saying those things. Silence, then more pounding. He wasn't denying it, just angry he'd been caught. Security arrived minutes later. I heard them tell Fabian to leave, followed by scuffling and raised voices. Mom and I stood in the kitchen, listening. It went quiet. Security texted that they'd removed him and called the police because he'd shoved a guard. Mom suggested I stay with them, but that felt like letting him win. This was my home. I didn't want to be chased out. Instead, I filed for a restraining order. The process was straightforward with the recording, security footage, texts, emails, and witnesses. Mom stayed another night, and Dad installed a Ring doorbell camera for extra security. They were worried, and so was I. This wasn't the Fabian I thought I knew, or maybe it was, and I hadn't seen it. 4 days passed quietly, no texts, calls, or visitors. I started to relax, going to work, stopping at the grocery store, doing normal things. I had dinner with Julia and friends, careful not to post on social media. Then yesterday, I found a manila envelope slipped under my door. No name, no address. Inside was a 12-page handwritten letter from Fabian, detailing everything he claimed to love about me, memories he cherished, plans for our future. The last page was different, the handwriting messier, more aggressive. If he couldn't have me, he'd make sure no one would want me. He had embarrassing videos of me. He knew things about Dad's business that could cause problems. I felt sick. There were no videos, we'd never made any, but the threat was violating. Whatever he thought he knew about Dad's business was likely fabricated or misunderstood. I called Dad, then the police. They took the letter as evidence of a restraining order violation. The officer seemed bored, like it was routine, but took my statement and said they'd look into it. I wasn't confident much would happen. Around 3:00 a.m., I heard a noise from my balcony. My second-floor apartment connects to a fire escape. I froze, listening. Another sound, like someone testing the sliding door. I called 911, whispering, and locked myself in the bathroom as instructed. My heart pounded as I heard the sliding door open, footsteps in my living room, and Fabian calling my name softly. I don't remember much after that. The police arrived quickly. I heard shouting, a crash like furniture being knocked over. When they knocked on the bathroom door, saying it was safe. I was shaking so badly I could hardly stand. Fabian had been arrested for breaking and entering, violating the restraining order, and resisting arrest. An officer said he was intoxicated and combative, knocking over my coffee table, breaking the glass top, and several framed photos. I spent the rest of the night at my parents' house. In the morning, I learned Fabian had been released on bail, but was ordered to wear an ankle monitor and stay 500 feet from me, my apartment, and my workplace. If he violated these terms, he'd be arrested again. After that call, I sat in my childhood bedroom and broke down, ugly, gasping sobs. Mom held me as I cried. When I calmed down, she asked what I wanted to do next. Move to a new apartment, press additional charges. I didn't have answers. I still don't. I'm writing this from my parents' guest room, surrounded by childhood stuffed animals and high school trophies. I feel like a scared little girl and an angry woman pushed too far. The police called this afternoon. Fabian violated his release by removing his ankle monitor. They're looking for him, but haven't found him. They advised me to stay somewhere he wouldn't think to look, as a precaution. So that's where things stand. I'm hiding at my parents' house while the police search for my ex-boyfriend, who broke into my apartment after threatening to release non-existent videos, all because I discovered he was using me for my dad's money. I keep thinking about that moment in the kitchen, listening to him laugh about how convenient I was, how I cut the pie and smiled and served dessert like nothing was wrong. I wish I'd confronted him then, thrown the pie in his face, and walked out. I wish I'd never met him. But it's too late for wishes. Now I just need to figure out what happens next.